What's the best way to introduce yourself in Italian? Well, today you're going to learn that, but you know our method. We don't teach phrases, made up sentences, but now you're at a point where you actually know how to process the language. And yeah, today I'm going to show you some phrases, but because I know that you can make them up yourself, and I will show you how you can do it even better, right? So we're going to look at introducing yourself, meeting people, and what things you could say. So a way to approach somebody when you are introducing yourself is to greet them formally, because I'm assuming that you're going to talk to people formally because you're a grown-up, and unless you're a teenager, then okay. Or if you're meeting very young people, then okay, you can be casual. You don't say buongiorno, you would say ciao, and you wouldn't say your last name, you probably just say your first name, but let's keep it formal because that's the more typical scenarios for adults. So, buongiorno, sono il signor Venditti, piacere. This is the basic standard greeting when you're introducing yourself. You greet with a buongiorno, buonasera, which good evening. You say who you are, sono il signor Venditti, or sono la signora Venditti, Mr. or Mrs. Now, we don't distinguish between married and unmarried. It's always il signor for men and it's la signora for women. If you want it to be a little bit more friendly, you could introduce yourself with your first name. So in my case, I would say, buongiorno, sono il signor Emanuele, but it's not very common to give your first name when you are meeting people. Piacere is the word for nice to meet you. It's like pleasure, piacere. Now, there are other ways of saying this. You could say, buonasera, sono Emanuele, piacere. That's still formal. You just went straight with your first name, which is kind of like, okay, I want them to call me by my name. Like I said, it's not very common at a certain level, at a certain age to do that, but you'll be able to read the room and know what to do. So when somebody introduces themselves the way I've just said, a way to respond to that is to give your name and then say something like piacere mio. Piacere mio means my pleasure. So if one said, buongiorno, sono il signor Venditti, piacere, the other person could say their name, Steve Jones, piacere mio. Or, if you went with your first name, buongiorno, sono Emanuele, piacere, then the other person would say, Francesco, piacere mio. Or piacere mio, Francesco. Italian is very flexible. You can put your blocks wherever you want. So as long as you got the word piacere, which is pleasure, or piacere mio, to mean my pleasure, then you're good. Another way of introducing yourself is just to give your full name with sono. Buonasera, sono Emanuele Venditti. Buonasera, sono Emanuele Venditti. Let's say you get to the reception. They've been expecting you because you checked in. So yeah, you can just go there and say buonasera or buongiorno, depending on what time you get there. Sono, and you say your name because they need to find you. So that's a very easy way because sono means I am. Very simple. And the other person, in the case of the reception, they're not going to introduce themselves really. They will say something else. But if it was, real life scenario where you're meeting people, then piacere, and they can say their name, totally fine. Now here's the option of only giving your first name if you don't want to be formal at all, but you're still being polite because you're saying buonasera. It's always nice to have those greeting words, right? So, buonasera, sono Emanuele. Piacere Emanuele, io sono Steve e questa è mia moglie Rachel. So what happened here? Somebody introduced themselves, they just gave their name, so I'm assuming, okay, we're all friends, it's all good. Then I can just say piacere and the name that I said, piacere Marco, piacere Francesca, and then you say who you are. Io sono Steve. Why is the io there? Since Manu is always telling me not to use the subject pronouns. Well, that's because somebody introduced themselves. So it's like they said, I am Manu, I am Emmanuel. So now you're saying, and I, on the other hand, I'm Steve. So we are creating contrast between the first person and me. So, piacere Emanuele, io sono Steve. The other reason why the io is there, in my opinion, is that I'm also introducing somebody else. So we have, I am Steve, and this one is Rachel. In English, you must say the subject. But I'm Steve and she's Rachel. You would do that. Imagine doing that, which we do in Italian, without having the word to mean me. So I'm Steve. Like, io sono Steve. E questa è mia moglie Rachel. Questa and this one. Questa is in the feminine because I'm talking about a woman. E questa è mia, that's my for a feminine word because the word is moglie, which means wife, and that's feminine word. Rachel. Now, let's say that you want to meet somebody, so you kind of want to get their name, and so you can go to them and say, Buonasera, sono Emanuele, lei come si chiama? Tricky with giving your first name, because it's not very common, but, you know, you could be meeting at a party or friends of friends, and so you could do that in the right scenario. Buonasera, sono whoever, lei come si chiama? Lei come si chiama, what is that? That is a formal way of saying, what is your name? The verb here is chiamarsi. We haven't covered reflexive verbs in this, in the 30 lessons so far, but it's an are verb that it means to call oneself. So lei come si chiama literally is you, sir, you, ma'am, how do you call yourself? That's what we're literally saying, but it's like, what's your name? Lei come si chiama. The casual version of this one, in case you are younger and you want to be more, more cool, then instead of lei, we say tu, and instead of come si chiama, we say come ti chiami. Tu come ti chiami? E tu come ti chiami? And you, what's your name? E tu come ti chiami? And then they'll give the answer, right? As you keep sharing more information with the other person, look at the trick there. You're saying where you're from. Sono italiano, di Roma. E lei? I say that I am my nationality, and I am of a certain city. It's from in English, but it's of in Italian, like di means of. Also pay attention that we cannot say in Italian sono di and the country. We cannot say sono di Italia. You can only say sono italiano or italiana for a woman. Sono italiano, sono americano, not sono di America. Di Roma, which means I'm from Rome. And then you always bounce the question with e lei, and you sir, and you ma'am. If you're being casual, e tu. And then that's their version, sono americano, di Las Vegas. So after the D, you put the city that you're from. Not the state, the city. Now, reality is that Italians are familiar with a lot of the states in the States, but they're not familiar with other, with every single state or every single city. So we tend to kind of, all Italians are from Rome. Because okay, they don't know my town, I'm going to say the closest town. And so everybody's from Rome when you meet people. Now, this one is a scenario where you're talking to plural people. There's more people in front of you. So you would say, sono italiano di Roma. E voi? Why that? Because you're talking to multiple people, not one. So, e tu means and you, casual, for young people. E lei is and you, formal, for older people, like you, sir, you, ma'am. But e voi is and you guys. But it can also mean and you, sirs and madams. Like it's the formal version, it's still e voi. We talked about this in the lesson on formality. We use e voi for whenever you're talking to many people. Now, the way they would answer is with the plural. So they would say, siamo americani, we are Americans, basically, like the adjective is in the plural because there's many of them. Siamo americani di Las Vegas. Now, this question is how you ask somebody where they're from. Di dov'è? Di dov'è? Literally, of where are you? So, because you are of a city, not from a city in Italian. So, di dov'è? Or, lei di dov'è? You, sir, you, ma'am, where are you from? Lei di dov'è? Or, di dov'è lei? Where are you from? You, sir. Because Italian is flexible. If you're being casual, then the question changes to di dove sei? Di dove sei? Of where are you, my friend? Di dove sei? Sei means it's the verb for tu, and è is the verb for lei, depending on which pronoun you're using to address them. You can also get back to the other person by asking their side of the question with e lei signora and their last name, if you know it, or their first name, if they've told you. So, e lei signora Francesca, di dov'è? And you, Miss Francesca, which is a bit odd in English, but where are you from? Or e lei signora Venditti, di dov'è? E lei signor Venditti, di dov'è? E lei signor Emanuele, di dov'è? Or if you don't know the last name, then just e lei signora, e lei signore, with the e at the end, e lei signore, that means sir, and that, that gets the answer. So the answer to di dov'è or di dove sei is, like I said, sono, nationality, di, and the city that you're from. So when you're meeting people and you are saying the stuff that you are learning to say, I would prefer for you to not memorize sentences. Of course, di dov'è is like it's two sounds, di dov'è, like three sounds. So you're going to be okay with these basic ones, or come si chiama. The idea is that you know so much now in terms of building blocks that you just start using them. And don't worry too much where you put the blocks because Italian is very flexible. Now, the next tip is very hard because when we are learning a language, we're so stressed about getting things right. We don't usually convey a personality. And how do you convey your personality when you're scared and shy and you don't know if you're saying it right? It's not easy. And something that you can do is try and keep an upbeat intonation. Even if you're slow at coming together with the idea, with the sentence, if you can say it with like an upbeat intonation, it's just gonna make a big difference, because that is the biggest challenge as grown-ups learning a language, is that we feel that our personality is not coming across. We can't say everything that we usually would say. We can't be funny because we don't know how to say funny things yet. And so it is a challenge, and the more you learn, the less of a challenge it is, but it will remain a challenge for some time. If you have an opportunity to speak regularly with Italians, then I highly recommend that you do. On our platform at italymadeeasy.com, we have a service. It's all included, like it's a single fee for everything, all the courses and everything that we have, all the resources. But we also schedule a number of calls every week. There are video chat rooms that you can go in and chat with our Italian native speakers, and you get to practice in a safe environment that it doesn't scare you, because there's no judgment and everybody's super supportive in our community. So that's something that you could do. It's always nice to remember to ask the question back to the person. So things like, e lei signora, e lei signore, or even just interjections like, ah, bene, good, ma dai, come on, for real. Use their name or titles when you're interacting with them, so that it always sounds very natural. So, e lei signora Maria? Ah, bene, che bello. Those little comments. Now, right now you don't know them, and I'm not here to teach them to you, because I want you to pick them up when you're doing your immersion by watching content in Italian. And that's it for today. I will see you tomorrow for your final lesson. Hopefully the final lesson of the beginning of your journey with the Italian language. All right, ciao, ciao.